Today's video will be another volume of true demon stories. But before we go into that, if you're new here or haven't done so yet, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and also hit that notification bell. I'll be posting over 100 videos this year and keeping an active pace. Alright, let's dive into the video. So, I don't know how many people really believe in ghosts or the paranormal, or in people who say they can see them. I wouldn't ever say I'm some professional psychic or medium. I'm definitely not. I just know I've always been able to see things other people couldn't, hear things other people couldn't, and I knew things other people didn't. Pretty much my whole life, I felt like a freak and a weirdo for a long time, until I just realized this is happening and it isn't going away, so I needed to accept it. I got help from professional mediums and the woo-woo community, and it actually helped. Backstory, but important. I was laying in bed in my room a couple years ago trying to fall asleep. It was a long hallway, and my sister's room was at the end, so was my mom's. My sister had a friend over who was dealing with an abusive boyfriend, and they were drinking and talking about it. Keep this in mind as this will be important. You know how you get the feeling someone's watching you? Or that feeling in a store when you just know someone stepped into your space? You don't have to look, you just know. That's what I felt. I looked up and there's some girl there with her head poked into my room sideways. I just saw her head sideways leaning past my door frame. She looked shorter, maybe in her 20s, long black hair, kind of like that girl from the Ring movies. I'm looking at her wondering what she wanted, and she started to smile. Slowly, her eyes got huge and black, and her jaw unhinged into this huge, sick, pitch black smile. Ice cold slammed into the pit of my stomach as I just stared at her for what felt like hours, frozen in fear before what I'd been taught kicked in and I made her leave. She instantly turned back to normal and skipped off down my hallway towards my sister's room. I thought, oh, it's with my sister's friend. Depression and abuse, all those bad situations can really attract those types of beings, so I didn't think anything of it. Fast forward to literally last night. It's been years. My parents got divorced, which is a whole other post of creepy shit. I realized it wasn't just my dad that was the narcissist. It was absolutely my mom too. They were a toxic pair, and currently I'm in a situation where I have to live with my mom. It's fine. It's free. I'll be grateful and deal with it. Last night, I'm laying in bed watching TV, minding my own business. Suddenly, I feel that feeling again. It's always the same feeling, regardless what type of ghost it is. For me anyways. I look at my door and it's the exact same girl. I asked her what she was doing here. She didn't answer. She just started smiling wickedly. Only this time, her eyes went white and her mouth grew into the same huge black grin, but she had tons of teeth like a shark. This is where a professional medium could figure all the ins and outs of who and what and where and how, but I'm not that good. I get up to get my incense, which drives them out, and she runs in the direction of my mom's room. I go out into the hallway to look in that direction, and I see through my mom's cracked door this weird demon girl literally sitting crouched on top of my mom staring at me, like she's an animal claiming her prey. It was wild. I've never ever seen anything like that before. Ever. I also realized this girl was never with my sister's friend. She was with my mom. For however many years. But the thing is, my mom's crazy and very, very negative regardless of what anyone does to help her. She loves drama and loves being a victim and loves complaining, so it's matching her energy, I guess. The ghost girl feels more like a bully than anything truly demonic. Like she had fun picking on people, which my mom absolutely does too. The ghost girl can't hurt me. She's just around, and man, it sure is scary when she is. She looks like an absolute demon, that's for sure. I've since seen other types of entities in her room at night while she slept, and I've told her about it. She says I'm crazy in one sentence, and then in the next says how it does feel dark. We shall see. So I had an experience in my old house back in 2010 to 2012. It lasted 2 years. I don't really tell anyone about my story because not only do I look crazy, but I also look like a liar. But I swear everything is 100% true. The first experience I had was when I was over the phone with my friend. We'll call her Anna. She moved to Oklahoma, so we talked over the phone every night. One night we were talking on the phone as usual, and I heard a knock on my door. It was 3 knocks to be precise. I didn't think much of it. I thought it was my mom, so I said, "Come in," and there was no answer. Instead, 3 more knocks, more aggressive than the first set of knocks. "Come in," I yelled, and still nothing. I then heard tapping on my door in 3s. I got up and opened my door and nothing was there. My mom had already fallen asleep in the living room, and my dad was fast asleep in their bedroom. My friend Anna and I were freaked out, but I didn't think much of it after that. But after that event, everything got worse. I would be woken up with nightmares, being pinched and my hair pulled. I decided to sleep in my parents' room for a whole year because being in my room was just too terrifying to me. My parents thought I was looking for attention. I was homeschooled around this time, only being in the 8th grade, and when I was home alone, I would hear bangs in the sides of the hallway walls. I remember feeling like I was being constantly watched, so much so that I felt freaked out to change out of my clothes into my pajamas. I started to spend a lot of time at my other friend's house, we'll call her Jane, and the entity started following me there, so there was no escaping. Jane only lived with her mom, and her mom worked a lot, so we were home alone a lot. And we began to hear the same pounding knocks on the sides of her hallway walls as well. We both smelt a foul burning smell, almost like a dead animal or something rotting, with a mixture of gasoline. We would light candles to try to drown out the smell. It would keep us up half the night by slamming things in the other room or knocking on the other door. I just want to add that she had no animals and her mom went out a lot after work, so no one was home. But once I left her house, she didn't hear any noises, nor did any strange occurrences happen. After a while of dealing with loud bangs and noises, my dad's things started to disappear and then reappear in random locations of the house. For example, his spare car keys went missing out of his drawer in the bedroom and ended up in the bathtub of my bathroom. Naturally, my dad accused me of messing with him, but it wasn't me. One time I was at Jane's house. It was a Friday night because I always stayed with her on Friday nights. And my dad calls me. The conversation went like this. Me. "Hey Dad." Dad. "Are you at Jane's?" Me. "Yes, why?" I could tell my dad sounded a little panicked, but I wasn't too concerned. Dad. "Well, something mimicked your voice to me. I was in the living room reading a book waiting for your mom to come home, and I heard you enter from the garage into the house and announce to me that you got bored at Jane's house." Obviously, I was shocked, because I didn't leave Jane's house at all that night. My dad stated that he got an unsettling feeling because I don't have a garage door opener, and that I always came through the front door. He told me that at first, he thought he was hearing things, but then my dog reacted to the sound of my voice and ran down the hallway to greet me. And when he went to my bedroom, I wasn't home. I wasn't in the house at all. Needless to say, my dad finally believed me, but my mother is still skeptical because she never experienced anything. After a while, strange noises and occurrences finally started to diminish. We moved out of the house, and very rarely do strange things happen. Maybe once every couple years I hear or experience something I cannot explain. I guess I will never know as to why a ghost or demon, whatever it was, would try to scare me every day for 2 years, but I'm glad that it has stopped. When I was 14, I had a strange encounter that still puzzles me to this day. On the weekends, I'd sometimes go to my mother's place. My parents are divorced. The house she lived in was converted into several small apartments. It was a creepy old farmhouse. The house was at least 150 years old. My mom told me off and on about strange sounds she'd been hearing and seeing things in the corner of her eyes, feelings of being watched. This one particular evening when I spent the night, I brought my N64 because my mom would go to bed early and I'd still be up for a few more hours. I still remember to this day what game I was playing. WWF No Mercy. I was sitting Indian style on the floor playing the story mode. I just finished a mission in the game and set down the controller to the left of me. Directly behind me was a recliner. I'll never forget what I saw next. I went to grab the controller and saw what appeared to be a hoof next to the controller on the floor. Insects and blood were coming out of the silver that separated the hoof. I slowly glanced up and this demonic figure was staring back at me. It leaned down towards me. Its face got down in my face and grinned the most evil smile. The eyes were black and full of hatred and rage. Face red, one-winged creature. Blood was dripping from the tips of its jagged, sharp teeth. It was so surreal I immediately went into a panic attack and blacked out. I learned later it was the fight or flight response. Several seconds later I came to, laying on the floor, could barely move. The demonic figure in the chair laughing at me. It was as if my fear and energy had been sucked dry from me. I lost all my strength. It was frightening. I can't put it into words just how bad it was. I did all I could to crawl away from it while clenching my chest. My body shaking uncontrollably from the fear and panic, and when I looked over my shoulder, seeing it laughing at me. My mother's room was a mere 15 feet away from the TV, yet it seemed like forever crawling there. I did all I could to crawl to my mom's room and woke her up. I couldn't speak or stand up for quite some time after witnessing what I had just went through. After I woke her up, we talked and she believed me. She told me that her and her boyfriend had seen the same thing weeks earlier but didn't want to scare me. I don't know what to make of it and still think of it to this day. I have no doubt demons and angels are real, and believe me, the last thing you ever want to encounter is a demon smiling in your face. I don't care if you believe me or not, but when 3 people see the same thing on 2 separate occasions, at 2 separate locations, either we're all crazy, or something is or was wrong with that old farmhouse. My mom told me prior to her moving into her apartment, her and her boyfriend had seen the same thing while they were living at my grandfather's house. My mom has thankfully moved since, and we haven't encountered that thing again. A few years ago, I was living in an older house in a small university town in northern Idaho. I had been living in that house with 3 other roommates for a few years at that point. My roommates had come and gone. My mental health was an ebb and flow, just like any other person. At this point, my sister was living with me and had experienced her own paranormal things that I was indirectly connected to. But for the purpose of this post, I just want to focus on one particular experience that I had with a little girl. This particular night, I had done my nightly routine. Washed my face, brushed my teeth, scrolled through Instagram, the works. It was just like any other night. Eventually I tucked my phone out of reach and fell asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night, not completely unusual. I usually wake up once or twice during the night. It's pretty rare for me to sleep through the whole night. Usually I just turn over and go back to sleep, like usual. But this night wasn't usual by any stretch of the imagination. There's one window in my bedroom which faces the neighbor's porch light. They very rarely turn it off, so there's always a certain amount of light coming through my window into my room. But when I woke up, everything was dark. I didn't immediately think anything of it. I mean, at some point the porch light would have to burn out and be replaced. Honestly, it didn't even cross my mind. Something was up. My anxiety, something I'm medicated for, immediately spiked. My heart began to race, and any ounce of tiredness I had in my eyes was gone as I stared wide-eyed at a little girl. Across from me, crouched by my bookshelf, only about 2 feet tall, maybe less, was a gray little girl. She looked emaciated. Her hair was almost sticky-looking and matted. She was wearing a nightdress, think Little House on the Prairie, that was shredded at the bottom and dirty. She was crouched almost like a frog, and it was almost like she was soaking up whatever light there was that was coming from the window, making the room completely dark except for a gray light emanating from her. If that was all it had been, I think I would have just rolled over and gone back to sleep. I had done something similar to a shadow figure over my bed previously, but it was her face. Her face told me she wasn't some innocuous child, spirit, ghost, or whatever. She was something awful, and something I needed to fear. Her eyes were very large, and she had no eyebrows. Her matted bangs covered most of her forehead so I could focus on her white iris and goat pupils. If that wasn't enough, she was smiling at me, but it wasn't a sweet smile. It was a menacing, evil grin. She was something awful. It stretched from ear to ear and bored into my soul. Once I realized what was going on, that there was an evil-looking child in my room, I went into fight or flight. All I could get myself to do was hide underneath my covers. I didn't scream, jump out of bed, and run. Nothing. I was so scared I couldn't move. Eventually, I knocked myself out of whatever terrified trance I was in. I had regulated my breathing and my heart rate went back to normal. I peeked out from under my covers and saw that there was nothing there. I was so relieved and figured that somehow a bad dream had kind of leaked into real life for a moment. I got up from bed, weary but confident that it was an absolutely terrifying dream. I decided if it was a dream, I would go downstairs to grab a glass of water. When I have bad dreams and I don't move around, I can get sucked back into that dream, and from my reaction to this one, I absolutely wanted to not get sucked back into it. So I got my glass of water, climbed back up the stairs, and walked down the hall to my bedroom and put a half-full glass of water on my windowsill. I didn't have anything else to put it on by my bed. The entire house was silent. I managed to fall asleep again. I don't know how much later I woke up again. The room was again so dark. I immediately knew something was wrong. Again. I searched for the little girl across the room by my bookshelf, and she wasn't there. I was relieved, but I still knew there was something off. Slowly, I realized that there was a light coming from the side of my bed, and it was that gray light. I turned my gaze downward, to the edge of my bed, and there were those eyes. The white goat eyes, and the sticky, matted bangs. Then, there was that smile. I could feel the weight of that glass of water on my bladder at that moment. The menacing, evil smile stretching ear to ear. I couldn't see the rest of her body. She was so close to me. All I could see was her eyes, looking up at me, and the enjoyment she was receiving from scaring the ever-living shit out of me. This time I screamed. I yelled my sister's name and threw the covers back over my head and cried. This wasn't right. I had done everything right. I went and got a glass of water. I shouldn't still be in this awful dream. I don't know how long I stayed under the covers. I must have eventually fallen asleep, because the next morning I woke to the morning sunlight streaming through my windows and birds chirping outside. It took a minute to remember what had occurred the night before. I immediately went to tell my sister what happened, and that I was very annoyed she didn't come to my rescue. After I told my sister, I came back into my room and noticed that glass of water had fallen onto the carpeted floor. So I did get a glass of water. I wasn't just dreaming. I must have knocked it over when I reacted so fearfully to the second approach from the girl. Anyways, that's what happened. I'm wondering if anyone else has had an experience with something similar. A ghost girl? My cousin suggested it was a demon in the form of a girl, feeding off of my fear. I'm not sure about that, but I'm sure of one thing. I never want to see her again. If you're interested, here's what I drew to get her out of my head. Mind you, she looked a lot more girl-like and less emaciated grown woman.